listening to Speaking Side Mount, the podcast where we talk all things side mount diving, from equipment, skills, techniques, and side mount diving expeditions to interviews with some of the world's top side mount divers. Whether you're new to side mount, been side mount diving for years, or just want to know more, this is the place for all things side mount. I'm your host, Steve Davis. Let's get wet. Hey, welcome back to Speaking Side Mount. I'm Steve Davis. You're listening to a special extended trailer of episode number 50, Jewell, Beyond Thailand, brought to you by XDEEP. The full episode is exclusively available to patrons of Speaking Side Mount, and you can find out more about becoming a patron of the show at www.patreon.com/speakingsidemount. Well, I'm super excited to bring you this, my 50th episode of Speaking Side Mount. Over the past 20 months, I've worked really hard to seek out and interview the very best from the world of side mount and cave diving. I've sought to inform, to inspire, help to improve, and hopefully make your side mount diving just a little safer. It's been unbelievably hard work, but it hasn't often felt that way. One constant has been all of you, and I'm incredibly grateful for all of your support and the many messages of thanks and encouragement that I get every week. I'm also thankful for the support of many great divers who've agreed to be my guests on the show. Most of them didn't even know me prior to me reaching out, and yet all of them have graciously given their time and shared an immense amount of knowledge that we can all now benefit from. I also want to thank Pieter and the team at XDEEP for their support. It was no small thing for XDEEP to step up when we were only 2 months old and support this show. And it's no understatement to say, without their support, it would have been really difficult for me to have got to this point. And so now, with 50 episodes in our back catalogue, it's time to look to the future. It's time to map out what the next 50 episodes look like and how we can build upon the amazing past 2 years. It's absolutely my plan to grow the podcast and associated content further. I'd like to deliver more great content, improve the production quality, take it on the road, and ultimately deliver even a better podcast to you, my listeners. Now, to support this, I recently launched the Speaking Side Mount Patreon community, which allows you to make a modest but really important contribution to support the show. I'm incredibly grateful to my foundation patrons and look forward to more of you joining us in the future. Now, one fundamental change starting with this episode is that while we continue to release 2 high-quality episodes every month, only one episode will be available on public release. The other one will be a premium patron-only episode. So in a nutshell, patrons will have access to all episodes, while the public will only have access to 1 episode per month. Now, I understand there is so much free content out there. However, I truly believe that the quality of each episode of Speaking Side Mount, the value and the knowledge that they deliver, and the effort that it takes to produce them is worthy of a small investment on our listeners' part. I've priced this to be really affordable, and the entry level for premium episode access is only $5 per month. So I hope that you'll join our community and become a patron of the show. All of the information that you need is available on www.patreon.com/speakingsidemount, and a link is in the show notes. And so, on with this episode. There is no doubt that the world is struggling against the COVID-19 pandemic. Some countries and people are doing okay, while others are suffering terribly. While being locked down, we're all trying to make the best of it, and one shining light is the huge amount of digital content being created right now as divers struggle to stay in touch with their passion for diving. There are live sessions, YouTube videos, and a truckload of often hilarious Facebook stories to keep us all engaged and somewhat sane. No question, it's no fun being dry. And so when Jewell gave us an insight via YouTube into his really interesting side mount setup for UK sump diving, I just had to ask him about it. As you all will, or let me say, should know, Chris is a member of the British Cave Diving Group and was part of the team involved in the Thai cave rescue nearly 2 years ago. Chris took part in the actual extraction dives of the rescue, and in doing so became part of history as a key part of one of the greatest rescues of modern times. Awards, accolades, and numerous TV and speaking appearances followed, and so it's awesome nearly 2 years later to catch up with Chris and ask him about how he got into cave diving, his experience in training and becoming part of the CDG, the importance of mentoring to the CDG training process. Chris reflects on his experience in Thailand some 2 years since the rescue, and he also shares more on his terrifying lost line episode while extracting one of the boys from the cave. Chris and I discuss the distinctions between sump diving and traditional cave diving and how this then drives decisions about your side mount equipment configuration. We talk conceptually about carrying a long hose, gas sharing scenarios, and some of Chris's favorite exploration projects. All this and much more in this episode of Speaking Side Mount. Hey Chris, welcome to Speaking Side Mount.
Thanks very much for inviting me. Thanks for having me on.
It's great. And hey, it's awesome to have you on. Obviously, most of the world should know the name Chris Jewell by now. If they don't, they're going to find out pretty soon. But can you share a little bit about how you got into diving?
I'm a cave diver. I've been cave diving since 2006. Cave diving in the UK, so in kind of muddy sumps. And I've been on a number of expeditions over those years and progressed up to rebreather diving and various forms of exploration diving, typically in quite remote locations. So I'm a caver first and foremost. So I'm quite at home lugging my gear down a deep cave, a deep pothole, and getting into a sump at the bottom of that cave and going off and exploring that sump. And then, well, I guess it's a couple of years ago, I was one of the British cave divers who was out in Thailand as part of the rescue of the 12 boys and their football coach from Tam Luang Cave. And I was taken on a caving expedition, only kind of, I suppose, must have been 9 months after I started caving. I had the opportunity to go out to Austria and explore some dry caves, so not diving. But I got absolutely hooked on it. The kind of thrill of exploration absolutely hooked me, and the people and the opportunity to go and do this amazing sport. So the CDG is actually the oldest recreational diving club in the world. So it's got a real history. And to be clear, it's not an agency. So I'm not even going to use the word training. There's what we call mentoring in the cave diving group. So rather than join the cave diving group, pay your money, do your course, get your ticket, actually instead you apply to join the cave diving group to become a member. Membership has to be voted on by the people in the group, and you have to find someone who's going to propose you and second you. What we do in cave diving in the UK, a lot of it's focused around exploration, right? It's mission-orientated diving. We've got a goal to the diving that we're doing. And so everything that we do in terms of equipment configuration, in terms of developing new techniques, in terms of building bits of kit, it's all being built and worked towards an objective. We're always working towards something. So that's to solve a problem in the sump, to solve a problem in the cave. But everything we're doing and adapting our equipment has got a purpose. Yeah. So, the Thai cave rescue's not even in my thoughts. And then every so often it'll come up, or I'll give a talk about it, or someone will ask me to give a presentation, or I'll write an article, and, and it all comes back.
And he mentioned your lost line incident. Yeah. And as soon as I heard that, I thought, man, I can just in my mind go through what you might have gone through. But the one added thing was you weren't just responsible for yourself at that time, were you? You had a child under your arm and you were trying to extract them several kilometres out of a cave.
Yeah, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there. The key bit there was having somebody else. And I remember at the time thinking, hey, if I need to, I can get out of this. I remember thinking, I got a lot of gas, it's pretty warm. Other people come through this. I've got a hell of a long time to look, right? And it's not a big passage. But crikey, I can't possibly contemplate leaving the boy here and trying to do that. That's just not an option. So I tend to think of sump divers as people who are interested in passing an underwater section of cave, but then being able to get out on the far side. So sometimes those sumps are pretty extended, and some of the top CDG divers have become very good at passing very long sumps, but still being able to get out on the far side.
I don't have any standard length hoses at all on my system. Everything's short, so that there's no loops, there's no nothing. Let's talk about the reason that you decided to do that.
Yeah, so I guess it's an evolution. Certainly when I started, it was relatively normal to see shorter high-pressure hoses, shorter SPGs. So we just took the normal regulators that we might have bought secondhand, maybe off eBay, and had them serviced by a friend and kind of started off like that, right? So throughout the kind of late 80s, early 90s, a number of people had expeditions to Culiembro, including people like Rick Stanton and Tony Seddon and various other cave divers, had made progress upstream working towards this connection with Z2. But what a significant extension, what a significant bit of line to lay. I remember surfacing in this chamber and thinking, this looks kind of interesting. And so I swam over to one side and got out of the water, and I was looking around and I was thinking, I'd seen a photo from the end of Z2, from this deep pothole, and no one had been down this deep cave since 82, I think. So no one had been down this cave for a very long time. But there was one photo that had been published. I remember thinking, it looks a bit like it. And I looked up on the wall, and someone from their original exploration had left a marker. They'd written OUCC, so it's Oxford University Cave Club, burnt into the rock using a carbide lamp. I have a side mount rebreather that I do dive a fair bit. And I was thinking it might be kind of interesting to do a teardown on the side mount rebreather.
I would love to see that. Tell me you didn't build it yourself, though.
Well, it's put together by me. So
Thanks.
None of the important components have been manufactured by me.
All right, mate. Well, it's been a pleasure. It's been awesome to meet you in person and catch up. Obviously, I've been aware of you, especially since the Thai cave rescue. And again, just the story of that was just, you couldn't write that script, could you? You just couldn't. So amazing to catch up. And thank you for giving us your time. I learned a lot. And I really did want to dig into that sump diving versus normal cave diving, if there is such a thing as normal cave diving. So awesome to hear more about the why behind the how and to hear more about your diving. So thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing.
You're very welcome. Thanks very much for having me.
Cheers, Chris.
Cheers.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. It was awesome to catch up with Chris and learn more about his UK sump diving setup and about his experiences in Thailand and some of the exploration projects that he's working on right now. And again, if you'd like to become a patron of Speaking Sidemount and support the show, please go to www.patreon.com/speakingsidemount. All of the details are there to help you. And by all means, feel free to reach out to me directly via Facebook if you'd like to discuss. Thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next episode. You've been listening to Speaking Sidemount from www.sidemountpros.com. If you like the podcast, please subscribe and consider leaving us a 5-star review. If there's something you'd like us to cover on the show, then let us know via our Facebook page listed in the podcast notes. Thanks again, and we look forward to you joining us on our next episode of Speaking Sidemount.